Yeah, look, you have all the time. All right.
The subcommittee will come to order. I want to thank all of the members for coming, and let us begin our second hearing on the fiscal year 2021 budget request for the Department of Energy's Applied Energy Programs. Thank you to our witnesses for being here. We come together this afternoon to discuss the Department of Energy's Applied Energy Programs, which cover energy efficiency, electric grid modernization and security, and energy technology such as renewables, nuclear, and fossil. The energy future of our country depends on the Department of Energy's vital investments to achieve breakthroughs to solve our toughest energy challenges. And if you look at that chart up there, I think it's so wonderful to see that as a country, since the department was first created, we have actually helped America come out of a deep nosedive in terms of domestic energy independence. The department's programs are at the epicenter of these efforts, and past successes of your programs have increased energy security and resulted in the United States becoming a net energy exporter, as shown from the Energy Information Administration's chart up on the wall. Looking toward fiscal year 2021, however, the Trump administration again proposes to cut the Department of Energy's budget, this time by an astounding 35% in non-defense programs. This will limit America's future opportunities by drastically reducing or eliminating programs critical for meeting our future energy needs and assuring our security. These programs have received bipartisan, bicameral support precisely because of their crucial role in undergirding our economy and preparing our nation for the futures to come, including the clean energy economy. One need look no further than a recent Bureau of Labor Statistics listing of key job categories seeking employees. First on the list is solar installers, like you see pictured here, to know that these programs already are major job creators, and we face tremendous international competition and also theft of intellectual property developed in this country. This budget request also returns to the Trump administration's seeming obsession with funding only early-stage research and development. As I told Secretary Brulette in last week's hearing, private industry has repeatedly stated that they would not fund the kind of middle and later stage research and development, including demonstrations, that is being proposed for elimination in this request. Without these critical federal investments, we won't be able to move early-stage R&D forward and really continue to launch companies to the stage that private investors will pick up the work. Abandoning this research sends a blank check to China and our global competitors. It turns our back on promising research that is critical to reinventing the American energy economy. And I'm reminded of a quote from Robert Kennedy: "Some people see things as they are and say, why? I dream things that never were and say, why not?" I think it's good to always look to the future. These ill-advised cuts are almost too frequent to enumerate, but allow me to point out a few particular egregious examples. All right, energy efficiency and renewable energy funding slashed by 74%. Really? Technologies like displayed there up on the wall will all be cut by 76 to 83%. Vehicle technologies, bioenergy technologies, building technologies, and advanced manufacturing. Also proposed for elimination, the weatherization program, which is so pivotal to achieving energy conservation for existing structures and helping lower-income families, including our seniors, to reduce their energy costs and, frankly, to help us meet our goal of energy independence with 40% conservation across our country. Third, carbon-free nuclear energy research and development cut by 21%. Carbon capture, utilization, and storage research within fossil energy cut by 44%. Really? And finally, resilient distribution systems within the Office of Electricity cut by nearly 60%. That program focuses on technologies to ensure the distribution portion of the electric grid can withstand and recover from disruptions. Given the increasing frequency and severity of storms and the potential of increasing cyber attacks, our nation simply cannot cede our future to chance. Unfortunately, once again, the President's budget request harms American leadership and our energy future, our competitiveness, our environment, our workforce, our consumers, and our economy. With that, I'll close my remarks, thanking all of you for attending today, certainly all of our Department of Energy witnesses for being here. We look forward to discussing this request and adapting it accordingly. I'd like to turn to our capable ranking member, Mr. Simpson, for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Chairwoman Kaptur, and I appreciate your opening remarks. I'd like to welcome our 5 witnesses to today's hearing for the fiscal year 2021 budget request from the Department of Energy's Applied Energy Programs. As was made clear at last week's hearing with Secretary Bruyette, the budget request for many of these programs is not as robust as most of us on this committee would prefer. We should not ignore, however, that within the budget request, many of the priorities are activities with broad bipartisan support, even if at lower funding levels than some of us would like to see. For example, the request includes robust funding for cybersecurity work. It emphasizes efforts to advance energy storage technologies. It recognizes the importance of critical minerals to our energy sector and, in turn, to our economic and national security. From a management perspective, the request focuses attention on several cross-cutting initiatives to ensure DOE's various offices are working together to better understand and address challenges across the energy sector. Better coordination across programs can help avoid duplication of efforts and help spur innovative solutions to those programs. There will certainly be areas where Congress will want to provide additional resources above the budget request. Personally, I'd like to see a higher budget for the Office of Nuclear Energy to help ensure that the next generation of nuclear technologies is led by American technology. Advanced nuclear technologies will be necessary to achieve any low-carbon energy goals and have those technologies be American technologies. It is important for our economic competitiveness and national security. To our witnesses, thank you for being here today to explain your budget requests. I look forward to hearing more about the administration's priorities in these areas, and thank you again, Ms. Kaptur, for calling this hearing today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Simpson. We will now turn to our witnesses. First, we will have Bruce Walker, the Assistant Secretary for Electricity. Mr. Walker previously served as Deputy County Executive, founded a consulting firm focused on electric utilities, and worked for several electricity-related companies. Next, we will have Daniel Simmons, the Assistant Secretary for Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. Mr. Simmons previously worked at the Institute for Energy Research at the American Legislative Exchange Council and on the House Committee on Resources. Following that, we will have Stephen Winberg, the Assistant Secretary for Fossil Energy. Mr. Winberg has 39 years of experience in the energy industry, including at Foster Wheeler, Consolidated Natural Gas, Consol, Energy Research and Development, and Battelle Memorial Institute. Then we will have Rita Baranwal, the Assistant Secretary for Nuclear Energy. Dr. Baranwal previously directed the Gateway for Accelerated Innovation in Nuclear at the Idaho National Laboratory, and she also has private sector experience at Westinghouse and Bechtel. And finally, we will have Alexander Gates, Senior Advisor for Cybersecurity, Energy Security, and Emergency Response. Mr. Gates joined the Department of Energy from the National Security Agency. He has 4 decades of experience in military and civil service related to national security, cybersecurity, and signals intelligence. Thank you all for taking the time to be here today. Without objection, your written statements will be entered into the record. Please feel free to summarize your remarks in about 3 minutes each, starting with Assistant Secretary Walker.
Thank you. Madam Chairwoman, Ranking Member, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss the FY21 request for the Office of Electricity, OE. Today we are faced with many opportunities and challenges resulting from a dynamically changing electric grid. In real time, the electric grid is adapting to a rapidly changing generation fuel mix, the increased utilization of renewable resources, and significant interdependencies between electric generation and natural gas pipelines. Furthermore, our industry is responsible for providing an essential national security commodity, while nation-state actors continue to attempt to thwart our ability to operate through nefarious cyber operations. With keen awareness of these opportunities and challenges, OE's FY21 request of $195 million builds upon our existing partnerships through the National Lab Complex, industry, and academia. While I will highlight several areas of our request, I would note that additional funding supports important work that is integral and complementary to the overall success of our mission to increase the resilience of our nation's electric grid. Number one, we are developing the North American Energy Resilience Model, the NARM. As a first-of-a-kind model, it comprehensively integrates and analyzes bulk power energy infrastructure, in addition to providing near real-time awareness of the system by utilizing advanced sensing capabilities coupled with sophisticated modeling techniques. It will also identify opportunities to reduce congestion charges, facilitate the strategic integration of renewable energy resources, and optimize the placement and utilization of grid-scale storage. The funding for NARM, advanced sensing capabilities, and advanced transmission modeling requests equal $21 million, $8.5 million, and $25 million, respectively. The development of the NARM will also help inform potential future investments necessary for defense-critical electric infrastructure. Accordingly, the FY21 request includes a new budget line, Defense Critical Energy Infrastructure, Energy Mission Assurance. Working with key partners across the federal government and throughout the industry, this funding will support the development of executable strategies to strengthen the energy infrastructure systems that supply critical defense facilities and their associated defense-critical electric infrastructure. Number two, we are on the precipice of developing affordable, commercially available, megawatt-scale, bidirectional electric storage that does not rely on foreign-sourced critical minerals. To this end, we propose investing $43.5 million in research and development supporting the Energy Storage Grand Challenge announced earlier this year by Secretary Brulette, which will utilize the department's expertise to address technology development, commercialization, manufacturing, utilization, and workforce needs. In addition, in FY20, we proposed launching the Grid Storage Launchpad at Pacific Northwest National Lab to accelerate the development of a megawatt-scale storage. We continue our efforts in this endeavor through the FY21 request for $40 million for GSL. OE's FY21 request of $195 million will give our team the tools and resources to help secure our nation's electric grid. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, Ranking Member, and members of the committee. I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walker. As you were, they switched the slide already. We were just looking at that, trying to see the colors from here. The blue actually represents power generated by wind, the yellow by solar, and the red by nuclear. We're not sure what the green is. We can't see it from here.
Madam Chairwoman, if I may, despite being the Department of Energy, this slide actually is a dynamic slide that rolls through the 24 hours in a day. And what you'll see when it actually runs, the file was too big to actually upload it, is that you'll see the changing generation fuel mix as the sun literally rolls through the country. And this is a representation of part of, just a small part, of work that we've been doing, working with EERE as well, that NREL provided to demonstrate what the NARM will look like in the future.
How interesting. We will succeed when we're able to demonstrate that to the American people. So through our hearings, and we're sure looking for a way to do them. Maybe you can find some of the geniuses over there to help us. That would be really nice. Thank you so much, Mr. Walker. Assistant Secretary Simmons, please begin.
Thank you. Chairwoman Kaptur, Ranking Member Simpson, and members of the committee, thank you for your time. The President's FY 2021 budget request provides $719 million for the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, EERE, to uphold America's energy dominance through technologies that make energy more affordable, reliable, and efficient. Nearly half of EERE's requested budget in the FY21 supports interprogrammatic or cross-cutting initiatives. These $225 million investment represents EERE's commitment to coordinating high-priority activities across its portfolio and within the department. Collaboration has been one of my priorities since I became Assistant Secretary, and this budget reflects that. I thank my colleagues on this panel for their support as we work together on these cross-cutting initiatives. In the interest of time, I will highlight 3 of EERE's cross-cuts for the subcommittee, as seen on the following slides. First, the department requested $97 million in FY21 for the Energy Storage Grand Challenge, a DOE-wide strategy to accelerate the development, commercialization, and utilization of next-generation energy storage technologies. Energy storage is a top priority for the department. As we move to a future with a wide array of energy options than we have ever seen before, the need to integrate all of these technologies is increasingly important, and we believe that energy storage is a key way to do that. Second, the department requested $53 million in FY21 in support of President Trump's Executive Order 13817, issued in December 2017, to develop a federal strategy to ensure secure and reliable supplies of critical minerals. The FY21 request elevates critical minerals activities across DOE to an interdepartmental initiative. Critical materials are used in many products important to the American energy economy, but the United States imports most of our critical mineral commodities. America's dependence on foreign sources of critical minerals undermines our energy security and national security. Third, the department requests $20.5 million in FY21 to accelerate innovations in energy-efficient plastics recycling technologies. EERE will explore novel technologies and approaches to economically deconstructing existing plastics, increase opportunities for upcycling, and develop infinitely recyclable polymers. Plastics play an important role in our daily lives. They're in the things that we use every day, the things that keep us safe and healthy, the things that make our lives more enjoyable, productive, and convenient. The purpose of the Plastics Innovation Challenge is to reduce the energy costs associated with the recycling of plastics, develop new polymers that are recyclable by design, and develop biological and chemical methods to deconstruct plastic waste, including from oceans and rivers, into useful chemical feedstock streams. Lastly, EERE will continue to work on the Water Security Grand Challenge. The grid modernization and other initiatives are outlined in the budget request. I look forward to working with you to advance affordable and reliable energy that keeps our nation prosperous and secure. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before the subcommittee today. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Simmons. We'll move on to Stephen Winberg, please.
Chairwoman Capter, Ranking Member Simpson, and members of the subcommittee, it is my pleasure to discuss the President's FY21 budget request for fossil energy. The Office of Fossil Energy is committed to ensuring the nation's abundant fossil energy resources continue to promote U.S. energy security, economic prosperity, and environmental stewardship. I'd like to begin by highlighting some of our FY21 priorities. Our flagship coal R&D program is Coal First. This program will develop the coal power plant for the 21st century with zero or near zero emissions, and its design will meet the demands of our nation's evolving electricity grid. Building on the advances we've made through projects like Petronova, the world's largest post-combustion carbon capture plant, we're continuing to advance the technology to reduce the cost and to ensure that CCUS is available for coal and natural gas power generation and for industrial sources of emissions. In addition, we're leveraging our decades of CCUS R&D to advance the development of direct air capture technologies. Moving on, we're writing a new chapter for coal with our coal to products work. This includes the production of rare earth elements and other critical materials from coal and coal byproducts. The development of these materials from our vast coal reserves can help reduce our reliance on foreign sources, support economic growth, and increase our national security. In addition, our coal to products work is targeting new technologies to develop valuable commercial products from coal, including carbon fibers, nanomaterial, composites, building materials, and 3D printing materials. In the oil and gas space, we continue to focus on R&D to ensure the responsible development, distribution, and storage of the nation's oil and natural gas resources, with an emphasis on methane emission reduction. Beyond R&D, the Office of Fossil Energy manages the LNG export authorization process. To date, we have authorized nearly 45 billion cubic feet per day of LNG exports. In 2019, we've granted 15 new long-term LNG export approvals. Our current export capacity is nearly 8 BCF per day, and at the end of this year, that capacity is expected to grow to over 10 BCF. Our LNG exports have reached 38 countries, and we're well on our way to becoming the world's top LNG exporter. With respect to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, you see the Big Hill site here, I hope. Yes, it's there. We will continue to maintain the readiness of this national security asset to protect the U.S. economy from severe petroleum supply interruptions. And we look forward to working with Congress to ensure that the SPRO will continue to meet the demands of the 21st century. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Assistant Secretary Winberg. Now we'll go to Assistant Secretary Barronwall.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Kaptur, Ranking Member Simpson, and members of the subcommittee. It's an honor to appear before you today to discuss the President's fiscal year 21 budget request for the Office of Nuclear Energy. As the nation's largest source of clean, reliable, and resilient electricity, nuclear energy is a strategic national asset for the United States. Nuclear energy reliably generates over 55% of the nation's clean energy and about 20% of the electricity in the U.S. As the use of nuclear energy continues to expand internationally, U.S. leadership is being ceded to countries such as Russia and China. The unique nature of nuclear technology creates a national strategic imperative to maintain U.S. leadership in nuclear energy and enhance U.S. influence by being competitive in global nuclear energy markets. Sustaining the current fleet of operating nuclear power plants is a priority for the nation. Without a robust nuclear industry, we will not be able to maintain the current contributions to clean electricity generation, nor maintain the associated U.S.-based supply chains, nor the fuel cycle infrastructure necessary for a vibrant civilian nuclear industry and strong national security. Through the Light Water Reactor Sustainability Program, NE is working to ensure that the long-term economic viability of our existing nuclear fleet is done so by conducting early-stage research and development to enable the development of the technical basis for the continued reliable and economic operation of the current fleet, as well as the development of technical solutions to enhance the economics and performance of nuclear power plants, including investigating alternative revenue streams. Chairwoman Kaptur, Davis-Besse, in your home state and mine, is leading a pilot project to generate hydrogen to fuel not only the Toledo bus fleet, but as well fuel manufacturing sites in that area. Today, communities around the United States and internationally face limited choices in nuclear reactors, which constrains nuclear energy's true potential. The market has responded through the emergence of dozens of U.S. nuclear reactor developers looking to seize this opportunity by advancing highly innovative, small, scalable, flexible, resilient, and more financeable nuclear reactors. These innovative technologies include SMRs, microreactors, high-temperature reactors, molten salt reactors, and liquid metal fast reactors. Having a diverse catalog of technology options will make the U.S. nuclear technology vendors more attractive and competitive in the global market and expand into countries that had not previously considered nuclear energy as part of their energy mix. NE is working to move forward our nation's next generation of advanced nuclear reactors so nuclear energy continues to be part of our energy mix now and well into the future. Through the Advanced Reactor Technologies and Advanced Small Modular Reactor Research and Development subprograms, NE supports early-stage R&D that helps stimulate the nuclear industry as it works to address particularly high-risk fundamental technical challenges in advanced reactor concepts. Thank you very much, and I look forward to answering your questions.
And now we'll go to Mr. Alexander Gates. Thank you. Please begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman, Ranking Member, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you to discuss the President's fiscal 2021 budget for the Office of Cybersecurity, Energy Security, and Emergency Response, commonly referred to as CESAR. CESAR was created to help secure our nation's energy infrastructure against all hazards, reduce the risk of and impacts from cyber events and other disruptive events, and assist the restoration activities. We are keenly aware of the cyber challenges the energy sector faces. The Director of National Intelligence stated in his 2019 Worldwide Threat Assessment that, quote, our adversaries and strategic competitors will increasingly use cyber capabilities to seek political, economic, and military advantage over the United States and its allies and partners. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea increasingly use cyber operations to threaten both minds and machines in an expanding number of ways to steal information, to influence our citizens, or to disrupt critical infrastructure, unquote. A reliable and resilient energy infrastructure is critical to U.S. economic competitiveness, national security, and, to put it frankly, our way of life. Maturing Caesar into an organization that is proactive, focused on its inherent strengths, particularly with the national labs and its relationship with the sector, are keys to its success. We will refine Caesar's strategic plan in the coming weeks with an eye towards these following priorities: situational awareness. Obtaining, maintaining, and sharing sector-wide situational awareness would benefit the entire country and all who operate energy systems. Discovery. Early detection and mitigation of malicious activity or dangerous devices is a critical requirement for Caesar. Research and development. A robust, purposeful research and development approach that targets gaps in the sector's capabilities is central to Caesar's investment strategy. And emergency response. Improving the department's performance as a coordinator for Emergency Support Function Number 12, the energy sector, under the National Response Framework, and our role as a sector-specific agent is important. And finally, operationalization. Developing processes that effectively align mission with people and technology to meet clear operational objectives is an essential furthering of operationalization within Caesar. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before the committee, and I look forward to working with Congress to address the nation's cyber and physical security challenges.
Thank you, Mr. Gates, and thank you all for your statements. As a reminder for those members present in the room, when I gavel in at the beginning of the hearing, I'll recognize you for questions in order of seniority, alternating between majority and minority until all who arrive prior to the gavel have asked questions. And for those who arrive after the hearing has started, I'll recognize those members solely in order of arrival, again, alternating between majority and minority. Lastly, I intend to observe the 5-minute rule for questions and answers, and will now begin questioning under our normal rules. Assistant Secretary Barronwell. The budget request includes $20 million, and I quote, to establish a new program for an interim storage interim storage capability. In last week's hearing with the Secretary, he stated that the Department of Energy would, and I quote, begin development of options and look at alternatives for interim storage, including the initial planning of a potential federal site at some point in the future. What specific actions is the department proposing in this request to develop options and look at alternatives for interim storage? And how are these proposed activities different than activities that have been carried out with funds provided by Congress in the last several years?
Thank you for the question. One of the specific actions that the department is planning to carry out is to issue a request for proposal, which has been drafted, and the intent is for the basic design of an interim storage facility. What we are looking forward to in the future is that there are developments in technology space that have occurred over the past several years, and we are hopeful that those will manifest themselves in the responses to the RFP. And so those are some of the changes that we expect to see from what you asked about prior years.
Have particular locations in mind? Is that part of the application?
Part of the work that's going on is to identify potential sites. That will go on, will be to identify potential sites. So to succinctly answer your question, no, we don't have a location in mind at the moment.
And so who would be, what are the categories of those who are being invited to apply? How would you describe that to the general public? Governors, private companies, how are you?
I would have to get back to you on that.
All right, well, think about that one. I'm going to turn it over now to Mr. Simpson.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I guess I'm kind of amazed at the budget request across the board here, and I suspect you all are too. But I know you have to support the administration's budget request. But in some areas, it's just woefully inadequate. In fact, I would go through most of this and kind of say that that's the case. I'm sitting here, and I think one of the biggest challenges facing this country and our security doesn't come from nuclear weapons being launched at us, while certainly that's a threat. I think the future attack on this country is going to be from cyber and be every bit as damaging as if they had launched nuclear weapons at us, and to what it could do to our country. And when you look at it, we're spending, you're requesting $184 million for Caesar. That's not very much money, really, in the total scope of things. We're requesting $195 million for the electricity program. EERE, $719 million, down $2 billion from last year's appropriated level. And as the chairwoman said, $1.18 billion for NE, which is down 21% from last year's level. And I think you said, Secretary, that it produces 55% of the clean energy and 20% of the electricity currently in our grid? It is kind of amazing to me, but as the old saying goes, the administration proposes and Congress disposes, and I suspect the budget will be significantly different when they finally get done. Let me ask you, Secretary Barenwald, I strongly support the Advanced Reactors Demonstration Program established in the fiscal year 2020 Energy and Water Bill. Demonstrating multiple new American reactor concepts in the next 5 to 7 years will be critical to addressing low-carbon energy goals and to advancing American competitiveness. Since the program's success depends in part on an aggressive schedule, Congress directed the Department to streamline its procurement processes and to take other necessary actions to ensure implementation. That implementation is not delayed. Can you please describe what steps you've taken and plan to take to streamline the otherwise improve the process to ensure timely demonstration of new reactor concepts?
Yes, thank you for the question. We have already issued a request for information and a notice of intent, and that has closed, and we are reviewing the applications that we have received, the information we've received. 33 different entities provided us content, and so we are digesting that, looking at multiple procurement options, including contracts, financial assistance, and the lessons learned from other agencies such as NASA and other programs within our purview, advanced SMR R&D and SMR licensing technical support as well. Our plan is to issue the request for proposal for this effort in the next several weeks. We have also embarked on ensuring that we are clear and transparent in communicating with the appropriators, and so we have had meetings with all four corners and shared with them the intent in our plans for moving forward expeditiously.
You mentioned in your testimony the importance of the light water reactor sustainability program, and yet there is a $16.5 million decrease in the budget request. How important is this program?
The program is very important. The existing fleet and the continued operation of those existing reactors is the giant on whose shoulders that we will deploy advanced reactor technologies. So to maintain the fleet, to maintain the supply chain, to maintain the talent pool that is part of that community is very important.
I'll yield back now and wait for another round.
All right, thank you, Mr. Simpson. Congresswoman Kirkpatrick.
Budget request proposes a 74% cut in EERE, a level that amounts to irreversible damage to the office and its mission. I'm particularly concerned about the proposal to cut the Solar Energy Technologies Office by 76%. Funding for the Solar Energy Technologies Office is critical to increasing solar deployment across the United States and decreasing its cost. And the program has a history of success. Solar costs dropped by over 60% between 2008 and 2017. The solar industry supports over 250,000 jobs in all 50 states, and my home state of Arizona ranks 6th for solar jobs nationwide. This program has helped the United States lead the way in developing, commercializing, and deploying solar technologies that are growing rapidly around the world. So here's my first question. Given the enormous cuts proposed here for the Solar Energy Technologies Office and other EERE programs, how can we ensure that renewable energy technologies can continue to develop and advance?
The budget, as we've stated, is focused on early stage research and development. We believe at this lower budget levels, we're able to continue to drive these technologies forward, including solar, by focusing on early stage, because we need to be gestating the new ideas of the future, and a lot of those are going to come from early stage research and development.
Let me ask you, is that based on a successful model that you looked at?
So one example of that is of a success is with NREL and the NREL and NETL and the MOU that they have signed with ExxonMobil, where ExxonMobil is going to spend $100 million over the next 10 years at those laboratories working on projects. And one of the reasons for that is because in the case of NREL is some of the early stage research that they have done on next generation biofuels and next generation kind of synthetic fuels. And by having that basis of early stage research, from there, ExxonMobil is looking to do more. So that is one example, I think, of how having early stage research is critical for new idea generation, so that we can then hopefully move them to commercialization in the future.
But we really don't know how that's going to work out because it's something we've just started doing. Is that correct?
So, well, we've always had early stage research and development. What the budget is doing is refocusing the budget on to really focus on early stage, when currently the budget has obviously, or the appropriated amounts is for early stage as well as later stage research.
And couldn't you have a budget that does both?
But it could be possible, yes.
Have you looked at that and what that number might be?
There are many things that are considered as the department puts together the budget over the course of the year, and for DOE to work with the office to work with OMB. So many things are considered as we are working towards the budget process.
Well, I just really have a concern about these enormous cuts. How can we ensure that renewable energy technologies can continue to develop and advance in light of these cuts?
Well, one thing about the cuts too is that this budget is very similar to the budget that has been in terms of size is very similar to what has been proposed over the past few years, and we have seen, and as Secretary Perry noted, it is the beginning of the process. It's not the end of the process, as Representative Simpson noted. EERE has very robust funding currently under current appropriated amounts, and it is a back and forth, and this is the beginning of the beginning of that process. And we look forward to executing on the funding as appropriated.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you all of you for being here, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. Congressman Fleischman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Ranking Member Simpson for having this hearing today, and to each and every one of the secretaries, thank you all for being here. Please convey my warmest regards to Secretary Bruyette. He did an outstanding job, very thorough, thoughtful last week when he was before us. As each and every one of you all know, I represent Oak Ridge, a great reservation, the birthplace of the Manhattan Project, and today leading in so many areas, and it's a privilege to represent them in the House. My first question, Secretary Gates, is for you, sir. Protecting our energy sector from cyber attacks is something that is a constant concern to me, particularly the impact that bad actors could have on the grid. I recognize this committee's responsibility to provide support for the department to ensure it has what is needed for these programs. In particular, I've been very supportive of the DarkNet project, which is a collaboration between the Electric Power Board in Chattanooga, Oak Ridge National Lab, universities, and industry. DarkNet is exploring ways to get critical infrastructure off the public internet and an important goal that aligns directly with this national need. My question, sir, is in your view, what additional resources might be needed for DarkNet to achieve this challenging goal, sir?
Congressman, thank you for the question. Instead of going head on to the additional resources question, I'd like to cast a broader net on the challenge that we face with such projects, finding solutions with collaborations that are essential, national labs, industry that provides the expertise, and then the DOE experience. Is that taking a result and operationalizing it in the sector is where the big challenge is going to hit us. How do we do that with contribution from the government and the essential support and adoption from the sector? And what is that going to cost us? That's some of, in meeting frequently with Assistant Secretary Walker and looking at the challenges, what happens when we have success? What happens when we have the silver bullet? How do we actually make that impactful in the sector? That's one of the challenges we face. DarkNet is a great project. Those are the types of collaborations we need. We have them in other parts of the country with other labs, and they're just essential because of the expertise that's necessary for us to find those tough answers.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your response. My second question deals with nuclear energy. It's directed to Assistant Secretary Barronwall. Madam Secretary, Oak Ridge National Lab has a long-established record in developing nuclear energy technologies, and for the past 75 years has been bringing innovation in nuclear energy to the forefront, from advanced reactor technologies to materials to manufacturing. In fact, bringing those examples together, ORNL is applying its broad expertise to a project called the Transformational Challenge Reactor, or TCR, that will help the nuclear industry with some of its greatest challenges and opportunities in cost, innovation, advanced materials, and deployment. ORNL's core research capabilities in material science, high-performance computing, and nuclear engineering are being joined with unique tools and expertise at the lab's manufacturing demonstration facility to demonstrate a revolutionary approach to reactor design and manufacturing that will ultimately lead to the deployment of new systems. My question is, first of all, I'd like to thank you for funding the TCR in the fiscal 21 budget proposal, but I'd welcome any thoughts that you might have on this project, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you for the question. As a materials engineer, this project is of great interest to me. I did get the chance to visit Oak Ridge last year and get an update on the project. They're making good progress. And as they proceed down their schedule, as you mentioned, advanced manufacturing is certainly one area that they are using in this project. Digital predictive analysis is another one, and those two technological advances combined together will lead to advanced design and acceleration of new reactor concepts, new fuel types, and so I'm very much looking forward to seeing the outcome of this project.
Thank you for your answer. I believe my time's up, so I'll yield back, Madam Chair.
Absolutely to the second. Thank you. Congressman Pocan.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it, and thank you all for being here. Assistant Secretary Simmons, I think my questions are probably more to you. So I'm going to go back to what Representative Kirkpatrick was talking about on the wind and solar cuts. They're pretty massive. I heard your answer, but I didn't really hear a real answer to the question. I heard what you said, but my concern is, coal and other fossil fuels are finite, and, someone's making a lot of money in delivering those to us, but wind and solar are pretty much renewable and free. I have 8.5 kilowatts of solar. I just checked my monthly bill this month is $23.55. Take that. It's a good deal. Next month will be the cheapest. It's usually around $8 when I get to the sun that we get from this next period. It was a $23,000 investment for 8.5 kilowatts. So for most people, with some incentives, as 11-year payoff. It's not a great payoff. I'm not a great investor, but I did it for other reasons. That's that second and third stage investment that you're taking away. You're still keeping the early stage stuff, but we need to get some of those ideas practically going to the market. And as the chairwoman said, the companies are saying they don't have the resources to do that. So if the companies can't take an idea that may be too costly to put out there, and you're now taking away the research dollars by 76% for solar and 79% for wind, we're basically not taking, as a frugal Wisconsinite, you're not taking this great free resource of the sun or wind, and we're not really capitalizing on it. In addition, in Wisconsin, until our last governor got rid of some tax credits we had, we used to make windmill blades because you can't take them real far away. That was a lot of good paying family supporting jobs. Same thing with solar cells. We could be making that here. So there's a lot of reasons why that the stages of funding that you've taken away mean real jobs and real applications and real savings in places like Wisconsin. So I just would really have a little better understanding of why those are the areas that you cut and why you think that those aren't important.
So the the theory of the budget, the theory of focusing on early stage research and development is because that is the most appropriate federal role to focus on areas that are pre-competitive. So that everyone may benefit from that research, because as we get to later stage research, it can get into one proprietary technology versus another one. So what the budget is focused on is on research that benefits, we believe, all parties, or all parties as much as possible. So that's why the budget is focused on early stage, because it is the most appropriate role for the federal government.
Yeah, but I would argue, I mean, I don't think it has to be proprietary at all going into the second and third stage. And if you really want to see solar cells go on rooftops, we have to bring the cost down a little more. The cost has been coming down, but part of it is helping find ways to use these technologies. That's the very money that you're taking away. So then it makes even less sense to have early stage development if you're skipping the middle of the actual practical application of whatever idea you're coming with. That's why I think that's why you have to have all stages to actually make this become a reality, and so we can all save money as frugal Wisconsinites and other folks who want to make sure that we're paying $23.55 in our monthly bill or less. So I just don't know if the logic holds out that you're going to invest in the early stage, but then not actually in making sure those actually go to market and can have a practical impact.
So one thing to note, or one important thing to note, is that every year OMB puts out a memo on research and development, and one of the things that it says in that memo is that part of our job is to focus on early stage, but then to make sure that we are partnering as much as possible with the private sector to advance the technologies forward. That the later stages of research and development are appropriately the role of private parties. But what gets missed is that it is an important part of our role to make sure that we are partnering with the private sector as much as possible. That is an important part of the budget, an important part of the theory of the budget, to have a focus on early stage research and development. Now, obviously, there is differing opinions, so.
Yeah,
that's
I'll
why we're
take
here
that
today.
as OMB might have made the mistake, and maybe we'll continue this part of funding that might make some sense. Real quick in my final seconds, you have a plastics innovation challenge in here, in University of Wisconsin-Madison's using a lot of biomass right now and doing some things coming up with plastic alternatives. Do you believe that the future of plastics should focus on bioenergy rather than fossil fuel-derived materials?
So we don't know. The point of the Plastics Innovation Challenge is to reduce plastic waste and to do it by whatever means necessary. That includes, because the Bioenergy Technology Office, which includes work on bioproducts, is one of the offices in the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. We believe that there's a lot of opportunities for bio-based pathways, both for bioplastics, but also deconstruction of plastics using biopathways. We think that there's a lot of opportunities, but there's also a lot of opportunities to do it with mechanical and other chemical methods. So let's look at everything, because the plastics challenge is a significant challenge, and we want to keep all of our options open.
Great. Thank you very much. Yield back.
Congressman Newhouse.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You had to think about that. I appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. Appreciate you being here. And as you can tell, there's a lot of interest in the administration's budget. And those conversations, I'm sure, will continue. But I wanted to focus on a couple of other things. First of all, Assistant Secretary Walker, welcome to you. Good to see you. I want to express my appreciation for your office's strong investment that you're proposing to make in the grid storage launch pad at the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. The Secretary was in last week. We had a good conversation, and as we talked with him, expressed to him that the Tri-Cities is very, very excited about playing a central role in this critical infrastructure. So I want to express that to you as well. We also talked about the importance of this storage for integrating the renewable energy on the grid, and certainly that's an important part about this technology. But I know that you're also interested in protecting our defense critical infrastructure, and so we have a lot of that in the state of Washington, but also around the country. Could you speak to the role that you see the grid storage launch pad and the energy storage technologies in general will play in that critical national defense mission?
Absolutely, and thank you for the question. I think storage is one of the, and we've heard people talk about it as the holy grail of the system, the Swiss Army knife of the electric grid. And in fact, it's both of those. As an operator who operated the system for 20 years, storage is one of those tools that you have in your tool chest that enables you to use it for different purposes when you need it. So, we're focused on megawatt scale electric bidirectional storage because it provides a number of ancillary services on the grid that are significantly important when you talk about resiliency in the grid. So when you speak about frequency control, voltage support, black start, whether it acts as load or whether it acts as a supply, storage has the ability to provide all of those capabilities into the grid. And by virtue of being a stabilizer in the grid, it also facilitates the further integration of renewable technologies commingled with existing traditional generation on the system. So storage is really the tool that is going to enable us to move forward to meet things like RPS standards, to increase national security. So, one of our keen focuses is on the national security, particularly the critical defense facilities and the associated defense critical electric infrastructure that feeds those facilities. And when you look at megawatt scale storage, it has the opportunity to be placed strategically in the system, which is why we're building the North American Energy Resilience Model to identify where those points are. And by placing it strategically in the system, we have the ability to secure those areas, whether we couple it with things like microgrid, other renewable technologies, and existing infrastructure on the grid. That security is something that really cannot be matched by anything else. And it's really part of the backbone of why Secretary Brulette announced the Energy Grid Storage Challenge, and it's the cornerstone of the building of the grid storage launchpad that you mentioned at Pacific Northwest National Lab, where we have the opportunity to really accelerate through collaboration, validation, and coordination amongst 25 to 35 different labs and universities led by the national labs, PNNL. And most importantly, and the reason PNNL really became the best choice for us as we had to go through the CD0 and the CD1 analysis, is last year we opened up the Chemistry Center. And about 2 years ago, we made a huge change in our portfolio for energy storage. And rather than focusing on rare earth mineral technology, things like vanadium and lithium, we took a look at opportunities to use rare earth minerals that are ubiquitously available and cheap in the United States. And to that end, we are now using redox equation flow batteries and being able to leverage the chemistry capabilities of PNNL and the new chemistry lab enables us to reach that megawatt scale storage in a very, very short period of time. So while we're focused on that, we're also focused on things like sodium and manganese for use in that storage technology. Again, highly available. We can build megawatt scale storage off them. and we'll have the capability to use them not only for national security, but for further integration of different types of technology into the system. So thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you very much for that complete answer. Like I said, we're very excited about being involved in this critical technology development that will benefit for us for decades to come. So,
absolutely.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I yield back.
Thank you. Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assistant Secretary Winberg, the Office of Fossil Energy has launched a Coal First initiative, which I think has been alluded to here, to support research designs of the coal plant of the future, which seems like an oxymoron. And the request includes $172 million in fossil energy to support Coal First. Let's consider these facts. In the U.S., electric generating capacity from coal plants has declined by 25% in the last decade, and the Energy Information Administration expects coal-fired capacity to decrease another 46% by 2025. Globally, coal-fired energy will decrease 13% between now and 2050. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration at DOE, despite expected growth in overall electric generation. So clearly we are looking at a future without coal, or with certainly less coal, not more coal. So it begs the question, why is DOE starting a new billion-dollar research initiative for coal plants instead of focusing on the necessary technologies of the future, like renewables and energy storage? And why embark on coal first when you propose to cut EERE by 74%? It seems like you are investing in the past rather than the necessary future.
Thank you for the question. I think it's a response-rich question. And I'll try and hold my answer down to 3.5 minutes.
I have another question, so I appreciate that.
The fleet is aging. The coal fleet is aging. There's no question about that. Part of DOE's responsibility is to look out over the horizon and what happens if gas prices go to $5 or $6 or maybe $7, and we've been there before on a number of occasions. So what we're proposing is the 21st century coal plant of the future. This is a plant that will have near zero or even zero emissions, or in some cases, negative emissions.
Right,
to your question, why do it?
If I can interrupt you and ask you for a moment just to stick more closely to my question. I know what you're doing. I just don't understand why. Because you're dealing with a finite resource, as Mr. Pocan referenced, and you are proposing to cut, which we're not going to do, quite frankly. We didn't do it last year. We're not going to do it this year. Why embark on coal first when you're proposing to spend $1 billion on a finite, old-school energy source that isn't renewable, instead of making sure that we can invest in renewable energy that is less expensive and more plentiful going forward in the future?
Well, the coal reserves in the United States are about 400 years, so that might be finite, but it's pretty far out in the future. The second reason is that this isn't a state problem, this isn't a country problem, it's a global issue if you want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And we have countries all over Asia, all over Africa that are building coal-fired boilers. They're going to have a life of 40 or 50 years, and they're using 1970s vintage technology. So what we're proposing is the coal plant of the 21st century, because these communities, these countries, these regions will continue using coal for decades to come. And
thank you. Focusing on the United States priorities, it makes a lot more sense over the long term to invest in renewable energy, not finite energy, in clean energy, not dirty energy. So thank you for your response to my question. I want to follow up on the Plastics Innovation Challenge because it certainly seems promising. But I'm concerned about the department's partnership with the American Chemistry Council, whose members include several petrochemical companies. This partnership seems to represent an inherent conflict of interest. These are companies that profit from making more plastics. If we actually solve the plastics problem, we likely will put them out of business. That's certainly not in their interest. So how is your partnership with them not a conflict?
So the reason that we partner with them is because they are the manufacturers and they have the knowledge about plastics, and they understand plastics better than anyone else currently. And so to be able to make sure that we are advancing the state of the art, to take today's bottles and to do a much better job recycling them, bottles, that's what's right in front of me, but there's plastics used for a lot of things. taking today's technology, but also to advance the state of the art. And
How can we ensure, Mr. Secretary, how can we ensure that these chemical producer partners are going to act in good faith during this challenge? Since
well,
it's not really in their interest.
we cannot, we don't know how they're going to act. The federal government is focused on reducing reducing plastic waste. And,
So you're not concerned about the fact that they could not act in good faith during your partnership and not make sure that we have plastics that are actually naturally renewable, as you referred to in your opening statement?
I mean, we obviously cannot tell these companies what to do. We will work with whomever, whoever we can work with to get the knowledge necessary to move to a better plastics future. I mean, that is our goal, is to be able to get the most knowledge that we can, so that we can do a better do a better job with plastics.
Okay, Madam Chair, I would suggest that as you prepare your mark, that we make sure that the department has to consider whether the plastics industry actually is acting in good faith, since they don't appear, since they've acknowledged here today that they don't.
I thank you for your recommendation, Congresswoman. And we will now turn to Mr. Kilmer.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Assistant Secretary Simmons, let me start with you. I mentioned to the Secretary last week that I appreciated you coming out to Sequim, Washington, to the Marine Sciences Lab in person. Thank you for that. Having seen it firsthand, I know you recognize that it is a first-class asset and an important asset and a unique asset for the department. As you know, the Water Power Technologies Office provides the single largest source of DOE funds to support the R&D efforts at the Marine Sciences Lab, which are a critical part of the Powering the Blue Economy initiative, which is focused on new marine renewable energy technologies that can be helpful to remote communities and ocean-based industries. I'm really grateful to the chair and the ranking member and this committee, because it has shown support for that initiative in the last fiscal year. That resulted in a number of funding opportunities, including the Ocean Observing Prize, announced jointly with NOAA. Can you speak to that dual role that marine energy innovation can play in both developing new resources of clean energy while also improving our ocean observing capabilities, and how the R&D of these technologies led by the Marine Sciences Lab is critical to meeting DOE's scientific and defense missions?
Sure. Thank you very much. It was I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to get out to Sequim Bay and to see the lab and to see the work going on there. One of the things that I am excited about in our is this the idea of the Powering the Blue Economy initiative, because when you look at marine energy, it is incredibly difficult to think about wave or tidal energy competing in any significant way with wind or solar in the near term. And so what we're trying to do there is to look at new opportunities for these technologies, so that we can get them deployed in some way, and so that we can iterate on the technology and advance the technology, because if what we have to do is to build a large device and to ship it to Hawaii, which is where there's a big wave device currently, actually there were issues transporting it to Hawaii, and it was damaged. And so anyway, it's really challenging, and so we're not getting a lot of learning by doing. And so with the Powering the Blue Economy and looking at ways to have for things such as sensors and floats, and to be able, how do we use wave energy and the energy of the ocean to power those, I think is a critical area. And it's why I'm very happy we're able to join with NOAA in putting together the Ocean Observing Challenge, because it is very much what NOAA's mission does. And so the Marine Sciences Laboratory is a key piece to help us in that, because they understand, well, it's DOE's only marine laboratory, and so they have a lot of capabilities. So there is I think there's great opportunities there. And looking at some non-traditional ways to think about marine energy that we haven't really thought about before, by exploring all the opportunities, and maybe, and as we were working to advance slowly the wave and tidal energy. To that, I'm sorry. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, I think it's a terrific asset, and so we're constantly looking at how do we make sure that that's getting properly leveraged. So thank you for that. With the time I have left, Mr. Gates, I know some of my colleagues already asked about concerns around cybersecurity. I just wanted to get a sense from you. Do you think that the department has the resources it needs from a financial standpoint, from a personnel standpoint, from an expertise standpoint to fulfill its responsibilities of ensuring reliable and resilient energy infrastructure?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. I believe the department is in the same place that many organizations that are concerned about cybersecurity are. They're competing for talent. They have plans. We have plans and a direction for, acquiring more talent. I think we are well within the budget to be able to achieve our goals for having the workforce we need to accomplish our mission. But make no mistake, it's a competitive environment. Everyone has cybersecurity, all the agencies, all the partnerships we have, which are pretty good when it comes to organizations like CISA, organizations like FERC and NERC, people we're dealing with, organizations within the community who have the same care abouts we do. But I think we, within the existing budget, will be able to achieve our goals when it comes to talent. What that does for the next 5 years, looking forward, just looking at where cyber is across not only the energy sector, but all others, and what's happening in the universities, what's happening in the sector. It's going to be a very competitive environment. It's something that we're keeping an eye on to make sure we have the talent we need to do the job.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You'll be back.
Thank you very much, Congressman Kilmer. Assistant Secretary Simmons, in this area of climate change and significant agricultural losses, in October, the department signed a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Agriculture to jointly increase, and I quote, energy, technology, development, and deployment this is not in the actual memorandum, but for climate-controlled and affordable energy for agricultural production across our country. I've advocated for this type of interdepartmental collaboration for years, and frankly am finally relieved to see some progress here. But I am concerned that the working group's mission is rather broad and unfocused. So I wanted to ask a couple questions. What accomplishments have the interagency working group achieved since October? For example, the department's expertise in energy efficiency for industrial processes, lighting and water systems, and energy and material science in particular can benefit climate-controlled greenhouses and four-season production platforms. I think we have to move into that as a country in view of what's happening in different regions. How will the Department of Energy work with the U.S. Department of Agriculture to develop and deploy affordable technologies to produce in agriculture across our country under this memorandum of understanding?
I'll talk about what we're doing. Also, the Office of Fossil Energy is also working with USDA on this MOU, and so I'll make sure to, if that's okay, to have Assistant Secretary Winberg also answer that question. So one of the it is a rather new memorandum of understanding. One of the one concern that we have not looked at anything around greenhouses yet. Some of the potential work that we will do is on, say, photovoltaic solar and agriculture, how they can coexist, because currently a lot of PV solar is just, you essentially bulldoze a field and put in solar panels. And what are the other opportunities that we can do to have, to have some agricultural uses of that land? Also in areas with wastewater treatment, because rural areas is very much what USDA works on, and looking at improving wastewater treatment through increasing the energy efficiency, increasing the wastewater recovery of wastewater treatment facilities, particularly from small and medium-sized facilities. You can do it here in the district, for example, at wastewater treatment at DC Water, because it is gigantic, but being able to downsize those technologies to really help improve the economics of smaller scale wastewater treatment. Hopefully, we'll be able to work with USDA on that, and I'll let Assistant Secretary Winberg add any additional color from FE's perspective.
Well, thank you. The MOU that we signed, in fact, next week we're going to be having, I think it's next week, maybe the week after, we're going to be having a joint workshop to look at power generation and agriculture needs. It's the energy-water nexus that we're focused on, and the USDA has a natural resource conservation service which has a budget of about $4.5 billion, and they work with private individuals looking at conserving water. So we have the power plants that might be in water-restricted areas, and we're evaluating ways to reduce water consumption on those power plants so that we're not sacrificing irrigation for power or vice versa. I think that the combination of DOE and agriculture is a good opportunity for us to share our knowledge, especially across those two vital areas, again, irrigation for agriculture and water for power.
We are so happy to have your focus there. I think it's going to take both departments to really lead America forward in this really important arena. I come from a region of the country where, because of our fresh water systems, we have had a historic greenhouse industry production. Oftentimes, 43% of their bottom line is energy from traditional sources. And with a little material science and with a little thoughtfulness, I think you could get that way down. And you could provide a boost to American producers who are finding themselves facing more imported food for different reasons, particularly the fruit and vegetable sector. But I really think a blending of your knowledge on material science, energy science, water science, and the Department of Agriculture's abilities in production agriculture could be most interesting. There is just tremendous opportunity for four-season production with inputs carefully controlled. For the West, the dry West, it also has potential when you talked about water conservation. But I think the envelope and the integration of systems is, I don't think we've had a revolution there in half a century. And it really could be a tremendous gift you could give the country if you could push that research. I also wanted to say, in terms of methane digesters, many of our large animal facilities can't find a methane digester that doesn't break down. Department of Agriculture doesn't seem to be able to solve that problem. Maybe you could help them. But if you look at kind of the blending of agriculture and energy, it's just, and I'll just say this for the record because I've been around here a while. I was there when we wrote the first provision in an appropriation bill in the late 90s to move the Department of Agriculture into fuels. They didn't want it. So you didn't exactly we wanted to add it to food, forestry, and fiber, so we're going to add a fourth F to your stool. It's going to be called fuel. Now you can't take it away from them. So you can't exactly say they had vision themselves over there, but now it's become a very important element of our way of life, and frankly, it didn't take that long when you really look at some of the other things we're working on. So I just wanted to put that one on the table for you, and believe me, you have the interest of this member in your work in blending your dual capabilities as two very important departments to our country. I'm going to let Mr. Simpson put in his question now.
Assistant Secretary Barenwall, HALEU fuel is required to operate most types of advanced reactors under development in the United States, but no commercial source currently exists. This committee has prioritized the recovery of HALEU from spent nuclear fuel owned and managed by the Department of Energy at the Idaho National Lab. Additional resources have been provided to scale up processing to a high enough rate to meet projected needs for first movers. Are there other steps the Department can take to support these first movers while demand for a commercial product materializes? And secondly, the recovered HALEU will still need to be converted into actual fuel for these reactors. What can the department and the INL do to help convert HALEU into fuel for first-time movers and spur private sector development?
Thank you for the question. Within the $12 million that is currently requested in the FY21 budget for material recovery and waste form development, the top priority is accelerated recovery and downblooding of EBR2 spent fuel in support of the high-assay LEU supply for first movers. The objective is to provide up to 5 metric tons of fuel feed material by the year 2023. And it certainly is responsive to the expressed interest of private industry that has demonstrated and expressed an interest at this time for that type of fuel feed.
The budget request includes $295 million to continue development of the versatile test reactor, which will operate as an open access user facility for DOE national labs. This type of research infrastructure is a critical part of the government's effort to facilitate the development of new nuclear technologies, as currently the only availability for civilian research is actually in Russia. Can you please discuss what the recently announced GE, Hitachi, and TerraPower collaboration means for the versatile test reactor, both programmatically and budgetarily? And are there additional opportunities to work with the private sector or with international partners who also would benefit from a fast neutron test reactor? And are there other steps the department is taking to ensure timely project delivery?
Yes. So in November of last year, I announced an expression of interest for a private-public partnership that you alluded to. GE, Hitachi, and TerraPower have been some of the entities that have applied to that expression of interest. Others have as well. And what we are doing at the moment is inviting those entities that have submitted to the EOI to submit for a request for proposal. So that's part one of your question. With respect to international interest, we actually did receive substantial international entity interest as well. At the moment, though, we have collaboration agreements with the countries of Japan and France to work together on the VTR. And so we're looking forward to that, as well as if there are other international collaboration opportunities, we will certainly entertain those as they come along. And then you had a third part to your question, and if
the third part was, are there other steps that the department? Let me find it.
Was it on schedule, ensuring that we stick to a schedule?
Are there other steps the department is taking to ensure timely project delivery?
Right, and so we do have periodic schedule reviews. There's actually an internal peer committee that does reviews to make sure that progress is being met on the projected schedule and budget, as well as lab director reviews. And so those are the types of mechanisms that we're using to ensure delivery on time.
Okay, thank you. Assistant Secretary Walker, this is the fourth year in a row that the administration has proposed to sell the transmission assets of 3 federal power marketing administrations and change the current cost-based rates structure for all 4 of the PMAs. By statute, the Power Marketing Administration's market power generated at federal hydropower dams at the lowest possible rate to consumers consistent with sound business principles. This means rates are set to cover the costs of the initial federal investment, ongoing operations and maintenance, and interest. Since ratepayers are paying all costs already, why is the department proposing to change the rate structure, and is this an attempt to privatize the PMAs?
I support the administration's position with regard to the potential sale of the PMAs, and as always, we'll execute the will of Congress. We continue to evaluate and look at ways to provide best opportunity for customers, and we believe that the sale of the PMAs may in fact do that.
Appreciate that. I'm not sitting here as one who's going to fight to the death to avoid that from happening, I'd just like to know why there's a benefit to it, and if there is a benefit to it. And so far, nobody's been able to tell us exactly what the benefit would be from privatizing the PMAs. So we'll talk about that, I'm sure, much in the future. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Congressman Fleischman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have one further question. This is to Assistant Secretary Simmons on advanced manufacturing, sir. Manufacturing demonstration facility at Oak Ridge National Laboratory is very successful. It's a public-private partnership for the rapid development of advanced manufacturing technologies. It's successful because it enables industry to access first-of-a-kind manufacturing tools and systems, as well as staff with advanced manufacturing expertise. Companies that come to the MDF and sometimes relocate near the MDF have the desire to work side by side with these experts and leverage the lab's unique tools and systems to improve their products and productivity in ways that will revitalize and grow U.S. manufacturing. In a global economy that can be disrupted at any moment, it's more important now than ever that this type of research and development and deployment should receive strong support from DOE as well as Congress. My question, sir, is what is the biggest obstacle to ensuring that the U.S. remains a leader in advanced manufacturing, and what more can be done through facilities like the MDF to provide opportunities for industry to directly engage the lab's experts and unique capabilities, sir?
We need manufacturing in the United States so that we continue to have manufacturing in the United States. And I realize that it sounds maybe like a bit of a tautology, but it is. A couple months ago, I visited Florida to Jinko Solar that has a new solar module manufacturing facility outside Jacksonville, Florida. And Jinko is the world's largest solar producer. They're based in China. One of the things that they said is that if this facility had been built in Asia, they could have built it in a month. It sounded great that they had built this facility in 6 months in Florida. That sounded really fast, but it just goes to show you the manufacturing challenge of manufacturing in the United States versus Asia. And so we need to have advanced manufacturing that can be that responsive, because they're able to build it that quickly in Asia because of lower labor standards and lower labor costs. And we're not going to change our labor standards. We're not going to reduce our worker safety standards so that we can do that. So it is critical that we have technological edge, and that we keep manufacturing so that we keep the people, the workforce, with the expertise. And one of the great things about being able to have a facility like the MDF is, and you have people locating around the MDF, is you have a lot of knowledge and a lot of expertise. And so you have like an agglomeration economy, so that the sum is greater than the individual parts. And the MDF is a great facility. Over 5,000 companies have visited the MDF. We will continue to fund the MDF as long as we're appropriated money, because of advanced manufacturing is going to be the type of manufacturing that we have in the future in the United States. And it is critical that we keep it, because once it's gone, it is very difficult to bring back. And the MDF is a great example of a bright spot in American manufacturing, because that one example that you see at the MDF is in terms of 3D printing, 3D printing of metals, and you can. With people from the MDF, we visited near Cincinnati to GE Additive facility, and one of the great things that you see there is a part of an engine, an airplane engine. I think this is a turboprop engine that was 300 pieces originally, 300 individual pieces, but now it is a single piece that is additively printed. So being able to make sure that we have that knowledge in the United States is critical, and the MDF is one key way to bring that knowledge and to keep it here.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Fleischman. I wanted to turn to the subject for a second here on renewable energy jobs. Assistant Secretary Simmons, you mentioned, we've talked a little bit today about solar voltaic in panels, but solar voltaic installers are expected to be the fastest growing occupation in the country this year, with the median pay at nearly $43,000 a year. These are really good paying jobs. And wind turbine technicians are the second fastest growing occupation. Think about that, with a median pay at over $54,000 a year. Clean energy jobs are on the rise, fueling a new clean energy economy. However, your budget request eliminates programs like the Solar Ready Vets program designed to support this growing clean energy economy. At the same time, there is a skills gap. So we need this workforce, but there are not enough skilled people to fill these jobs. Given the skills gap, why is the department proposing to eliminate important workforce programs? And what more can the department do to train the workforce that is needed to fill these jobs?
EERE has very much has a strong interest in developing and maintaining a strong and well-trained workforce. As I just mentioned in the previous answer to the previous question, that one of the challenges, for example, that I saw in Florida that Jinko Solar said is just that in Asia they do not have to train their workers nearly as much as you need to in the United States for module manufacturing because they come from other module manufacturers currently. And because we do not have very much solar module manufacturing in the United States currently, that's some expertise that has been lost, but is hopefully will come back some. We are preparing to launch in the next couple weeks from funds appropriated in for FY20 a $20 million partnership to pursue leading-edge interdisciplinary research that promotes workforce development in emerging fields by supporting a coordinated expansion of existing joint graduate education programs with national laboratories and for next-generation scientists and engineers. That the department recognizes that the workforce of the future is very important, and that is in the appropriated monies that we have, and we will continue to execute on that as appropriated. But the department takes the workforce challenge seriously.
Yes, I just wanted to point out to you that some of these positions are not PhDs, but they do require great skill. A lot of times veterans, just as the electric generating companies know, not everybody can crawl up on a pole that's 80 feet high. And the same is true with wind energy. And these are skills, manual skills that require a great deal of intelligence so you don't electrocute yourself. So you need training and workforce development. And it isn't just the PhDs doing some of the research into the future, but I hope that you focus on some of the capabilities that we've had before this very committee and make linkages there as well. So, we're talking about solar installers, we're talking about wind turbine installers. Imagine the country doesn't have enough of them, and I'm talking about thousands and thousands of jobs. So I hope that your inquiry leads you there.
Okay.
And I'm glad we've had this discussion. And I wanted to ask a question also on your hiring practices. The 2020 appropriation bill provides a significant increase to your program direction with the expectation that the office achieve a full-time equivalent staffing level of at least 675. I know you're making progress on that, but remain concerned that the department is filling career positions with political appointees. Most recently, Assistant Secretary Simmons, you filled a senior-level position in your office traditionally held by a highly qualified career civil servant with a political appointee who not only has very little relevant experience, but once advocated for the office's closure. Are you having difficulty finding qualified civil servants to fill your vacancies, and will you commit to me here that you will stop converting career positions to political positions?
Well, the department is focused on executing our mission, and it will always be a combination of career and political appointees to be able to carry that out. In all offices, there are around DOE, there are deputy assistant secretaries that are a mix of political and career. What matters is executing on the mission and putting together the team that can best achieve that. And that's what our goal is. That's what our goal is, staffing.
So you're not prepared to commit to me today that you will not convert career positions to political positions?
Well, the challenge there is what is a political position versus a career position. I'm not sure what the distinction is, so that's not something that I could commit to do.
We'll ask
Until
for
we
follow-up
understand
for
that.
the record.
Sure.
Thank you. Congressman Simpson?
Thank you. Just a couple more questions. Secretary Barronwall, as you know, the Idaho National Laboratory recently launched the National Reactor Innovation Center, or NRIC, which will provide private sector technology developers support to accelerate the testing and demonstration of new nuclear systems for eventual licensing and commercialization. How will the Advanced Reactors Demonstration Program complement the work of NRIC, and how can NRIC help increase the impact of the demonstration programs in commercializing the next generation of advanced reactors? Outside of the Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program, what role do you see NRIC in supporting reactor designs and designers, and how can NRIC and GAIN work together to support innovation and demonstration projects? That's a lot of questions.
NRIC and GAIN are both very complementary, and they are coordinating their efforts to continue to support private industry. GAIN is certainly intended to provide private industry access to national lab capabilities with respect to technical expertise, testing facilities, regulatory assistance, and some financial assistance. NRIC is looking at the federal infrastructure, including sites, facilities, materials, and expertise that would be needed to deploy advanced reactor technologies. In its purview, it will be preparing the necessary safety, safeguards, security, and environmental evaluations. So all of those very much are required and will be needed by the private industry companies that will be demonstrating through the Advanced Reactor Demo Program.
Thank you. Mr. Winberg, I got the feeling you wanted to kind of say a little more about the importance of fossil energy, but didn't get the chance to respond fully to the questioner of those questions earlier. I won't say who or anything like that. Tell me, how much fossil fuel, what percentage of the electricity is produced by fossil fuel today?
About 80% of our overall energy, which includes
overall
electricity and transportation, is fossil energy, coal, oil, and natural gas.
When do you expect to get that to zero?
Not in my lifetime, certainly, and probably not in my children. IEA, under their best-case scenario, will be down to about 75% globally, 75% fossil energy from 80 today, 75% by about 2050.
So given that that's kind of the future looking down the road, and that takes into account what we're doing with renewables and so forth and so on, would it not be important to develop new coal plants that are zero emission if possible?
Yes, sir. I think it would make a lot of sense, both here in the United States as well as around the world. And not only can we make them zero emission, we can make them net negative CO2 emissions. If we burn, say, 80% coal and 20% biomass with 95% CCUS, they will be net negative CO2 emissions. Furthermore, we're going to take the next step, and we're going to be looking at coal, biomass, and waste plastics to produce hydrogen, because we need to deal with the transportation sector. And we can do that, and we can do it on a net negative CO2 emissions, producing hydrogen, which can be used then for transportation. It can be used for power generation, and it can be used in the industrial sector.
And just to clarify, when CO2 goes into the atmosphere, does it stay over the place it was produced, or does it go around the world?
So it's caught up in the atmosphere, and that's why it's a global challenge, not just.
So emissions and what they're doing in China and India and other places that are building coal facilities is as important actually as it is in this country too, right?
Yes, sir, perhaps more important as it relates to CO2 emissions.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here today. Mr. Gates, I didn't ask you any questions because I'm so confused on what we have to do with cybersecurity, and I want to come down to your facility and sit down, and I know some of this stuff is classified, but go through where we are and what we can do to ensure the cybersecurity of this country in the future in the electrical grid, because as I said earlier, I'm almost more worried about that than I am of other things. So I appreciate all that all of you do, and you should know that a lot of times people think of national security as our defense and that kind of stuff. Well, everything you do in national security to make us energy independent, to make our grid secure, to develop new technologies and so forth, to make sure that the nuclear reactors and so forth of the future are actually American designed with the safety that we put into them. Everything you do is as important to national defense as defense is. So I appreciate all you do, and thank you all.
I want to thank the ranking member for his remarks, and I endorse them. And I also want to thank Congressman Fleischman for remaining with us here. I just have a couple final questions. Assistant Secretary Winberg, you talked about a hydrogen future in transportation, and you hit the key on my piano for sure on that one. So if I wanted to see the future in our country of hydrogen in transportation, which geographic location would you direct me to? Anything come to mind?
No, I don't think anything comes to mind as it relates to hydrogen, because hydrogen can be produced through electrolysis using the Davis-Besse nuclear power plants. It can be produced from natural gas through natural gas reforming with CCUS, and it can be used from coal. So what that suggests to me is that around the United States, across the United States, we can produce hydrogen, maybe do it in a reasonably distributed manner, so that we're not centralizing our hydrogen production and then transporting it out to the areas that need it.
Thank you very much. I also wanted to ask you that your budget request cuts research for carbon capture, utilization, and storage by nearly $100 million. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think is the potential for carbon utilization technologies, and how you justify the proposed cuts to these accounts? FYI, the University of Toledo in my home community is developing technologies for algae systems that capture and reuse carbon dioxide to produce renewable materials.
Thank you for the question. We're going to have about $123 million in our budget request for CCUS, and that is going to allow us to do some of the early stage research, because the technologies are out there to capture carbon. What we need to do is get that cost down, and we've got a goal at the Department of Energy to reduce it down to about $30 a ton from notionally 45 or 50 where it's at right now. We also have 45Q, and the Internal Revenue Service is writing regulations finalizing that. We're going to see demonstration projects come out of 45Q that will be commercial scale, done by private industry. And when that happens, that's when the learning really begins. The federal government can move back and allow industry to do what it does best, and that's to innovate. So I think there are great opportunities for CCUS. We have done some work in algae because it is a means of sequestering CO2. Then you can turn it into a fuel or into a fertilizer. There's different uses for algae. So we've got, in fact, we've currently got about $4.5 million worth of projects going on. We just released a funding opportunity announcement, and we're reviewing those now. I don't know if the University of Toledo participated in that, and if they did, it'd be procurement sensitive, so I couldn't talk about it. But there are opportunities clearly for algae to be used in the transportation sector, and also as a sequestration measure for CO2.
The University of Toledo project was funded by the Bioenergy Technology Office. Just for just a note of clarification that that the Office of Fossil Energy and EERE work together in this area, as well as making sure that we are keeping the aperture wide open in terms of carbon utilization.
Thank you very much. I know my colleagues know you've heard me talk about algae a lot, but if you lived in the southernmost of the Great Lakes and you see what it does, my question really is, are we producing it anew or are we using what's already there? I don't know if there's a harvesting mechanism yet, but that gets into a much larger conundrum as one tries to solve the problem in the watershed. So that produces the algae in the end, and with climate change and so forth, it's just a new stew we're facing in the all over the country, in the Everglades, where we live. I think even in Idaho, Montana, we've had real issues. I know up in Green Bay, I guess that's why it has the name Green Bay, but up in Wisconsin. But we really do need.
Is that why it's called Green Bay?
I think so. I think so. But it never was quite this much.
Yeah.
So we have real challenges there, especially when part of it becomes toxic and it enters your freshwater systems. That is really a very dangerous moment. Finally, last question, and I thank my colleagues. Assistant Secretary Simmons, the administration has chosen to eliminate the weatherization and state energy program. That helps individuals across our country save on energy costs, particularly those who have limited incomes and are elderly. And with states across the country facing budget pressures, who do you believe should pay for these, if not the federal government? And the department's coordination with other federal agencies is crucial. At the ground, grantees do not know the difference between the color of funds. So can you elaborate on ways in which local weatherization grantees are leveraging weatherization funding with other related federal programs? One of the things I learned, which was just astounding to me, and going to some of our announcements for the weatherization program, is that your department, through the states, fund magnificent retrofits of furnaces. They have these inventions where you can see where the cold air is coming from or the hot air into a home, but there's no coordination with HUD. So if you fix the furnace and the roof leaks, it still isn't a perfect solution. And so I found the need for collaboration huge. And some states do a good job, some states don't do a good job, and this is a real need across our country as some of this stock ages. It's still good stock. We need to fix it. Not everybody wants to live in a brand-new house with no basement. And we have some phenomenal work going on sort of south of where Mike lives in the western part of the country, where we've got net zero homes being built in Arizona. I think that is so exciting. What the construction industry has responded to, but the necessity to kind of coordinate a little bit between energy agencies and housing agencies wouldn't be a bad idea, and to try to do the whole unit at once. And I think there needs to be a little more rigor there. So I know your budget has basically eliminated it. I hope that we're able to change that as we move the bill forward. Did you want to make any comments on weatherization?
Well, what I will say about weatherization is that the zeroing out is not a reflection of the importance of the program. It is a reflection of it is a state program. It should, the theory is that it should be then funded by the states, and that it could then maybe reflect some local circumstances better. So that's the theory of the budget. As you've seen over the past few years, we will work very hard, and our weatherization office works very hard to execute on the monies appropriated, to be able to make sure that the weatherization money gets out on time, as well as the state energy program money gets out on time. It is as you noted, some states do better than others at being able to bring together and to do more innovative projects. I visited in November. I went to Madison, Wisconsin, to Representative Pokin's district, and saw some weatherization work going on there, and that Wisconsin does really quite a good job in terms of bringing together different sources of funding to be able to make larger improvements for each project that they work on. So it's great to see.
Well, generally, yield for just a minute.
I would be more than pleased to yield to the
I agree with you. I think zeroing out the weatherization program is a big mistake. But you know who pays for it? Pays a lot of the costs in the Pacific Northwest? the Bonneville Power Administration, the power marketing agency that this budget proposes to, I think, privatize. That's where a lot of the money comes from for the weatherization programs. And I've gone to a lot of different homes where they have done just what you said. I mean, they do the whole home. They go in and they do that thing you said with the walls to see where everything's coming from and see if there's leaks and other stuff. They go downstairs and look at the amount of insulation and everything else, and they do amazing stuff. And over a period of time, that's energy saved, is energy you don't have to produce.
Thank you very much for those comments, Congressman Simpson, and we hope that, I urge you to be creative. We provided some language in the bill for 2020 to look at retrofit of entire neighborhoods, not just individual homes, where you could have off-site solar, where you could use geothermal. We'd leave it up to the creativity of the experts, and that's really where DOE has an advantage over many of the states, because the states don't really do research. Those devices that they've developed, the fans, the measuring devices, that's a little bit high-tech for states to do, and I would expect that we have other innovations that could come that could help at the local level. So don't underestimate your own capabilities to help these states. You've moved America forward. You've weatherized millions of homes. You've saved them for the next generation. That's a big deal for people across this country, particularly those who can't afford to do it themselves. So, Congressman Simpson, do you have any other questions for the record? We want to thank our witnesses very, very much. This concludes this afternoon's hearing. I again want to express my sincere thanks for all the effort that you devote to the people of this country and to its future, and I ask the witnesses to please ensure for the hearing record that questions for the record and any supporting information requested by the subcommittee are delivered in final form to us no later than 3 weeks from the time you receive them. Members who have additional questions for the record will have until the close of business this Friday to provide them to the subcommittee office. We thank all of our guests in the audience for your patience and interest. This hearing is adjourned.